Most people drink coffee every single morning without thinking about who owns the farms, who controls the supply chain, or who's profiting from one of the most consumed commodities on the planet. What if that person could be you? Welcome back to the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast, the show where we help entrepreneurs break free from ordinary investing and start building wealth on their own terms. I'm your host, Patrick Lonergan, and today we've got a conversation that is genuinely unlike anything we've covered before. My guest today is Adam Jason, a former Wall Street attorney who walked away from a six-figure legal career to move to Medellin, Colombia, and become a co-founder of the largest coffee producer in the country. We're talking tens of thousands of acres, 10 million coffee trees, major partnerships with brands like Juan Valdez, Carnival Cruise Lines, and Target. Adam is going to pull back the curtain on why the smartest alternative investors are quietly moving into commodities like coffee, how adding investments like this one actually dampens the volatility in your portfolio, why getting in before the IPO can be one of the most asymmetric opportunities available to accredited investors right now. And if this episode gets your wheels turning, which I promise it will, head over to vitalwealth.com/resources. We've built a vault of tools, guides, and strategies specifically for entrepreneurs who are serious about tax strategy and building lasting wealth. That's vitalwealth.com/resources. Before we jump in, if this show has ever given you one idea that changed how you think about money, take 30 seconds and leave us a review. It helps us bring more guests like Adam to you every single week. All right, let's get into it. I'm excited about our conversation today. We've got Adam Jason on the show, and we're going to talk about some alternative investment opportunities and why those make sense. And so, Adam, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm looking forward to this conversation because one of the reasons from a macro point of view when we think about investing that happens when you add alternative investments into what I'll call your stock and bond portfolio, it actually dampens the volatility, which is really interesting. And so that's kind of nice. And then there's also just limited access to private market opportunities. People can get really feel not so great about how the stock market's performing, feel like they'd have no control over that. And so being able to invest directly with a company is good. But it's also difficult to identify credible operators in the alternative investment space. We think that's probably the most important factor when you're assessing these things. And so, internally, we look at the frustrations like, man, I built wealth. I don't feel like I'm playing the same game as other elite investors. There's this uncertainty of, am I missing out on better opportunities, or how do I diversify what I'm doing? And then there's just skepticism. How do I trust deals outside of the traditional systems? And so I'm looking forward to digging into those. And then just philosophically, the best investment opportunities shouldn't be reserved for insiders only. And entrepreneurs who create wealth, they deserve better vehicles to just continue to grow that wealth. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. So if it's okay, can you give us a little bit of your background on just how you got into the coffee space? We're going to be talking about Green Coffee Company and what's going on there. But I'm very interested in this. And before you answer that, I've got a friend that owns a coffee shop. We work out every morning together, so that means I'm up really early working out, which I like getting up early, but probably not quite that early. But he likes to nerd out and tell me how coffee is a fruit. And so that's my fun coffee fact for today. But tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved in this space.
Well, it's good to have an inside track on coffee if you're waking up that early. That's useful. I'm talking to you today from Medellin, Colombia, a long way from Buffalo, New York, where I was born and raised. Practiced as an attorney in the U.S. for about 8 years before coming to Colombia in 2018. I'm a capital markets corporate attorney by background, so focused on companies going public. My clients were also Fortune 500 companies and Wall Street investment banks. Did a lot of deals raising money in public and private markets, as well as focused on corporate governance and other business transactions that impacted our clients on a daily basis. I got to the point in my career where a lot of attorneys get to, and also white collar professionals. At least for me, it was, do you become a partner at the law firm? Do you go in-house at a client that you have? Or do you try and do something kind of totally outside the box, entrepreneurial and something different? I was working in Dallas at the time and got an offer to join a new firm in Houston. Had about a month gap between the two positions. Came down to Medellin, Colombia, really just kind of on a whim. I was learning some Spanish, living in Texas,
Yeah.
just branching out mentally a little
Yeah.
bit. Wanted to spend a month abroad and just kind of feel what it was like to live in a different
Hmm.
place, in a different country, a different culture, a different language, that sort of thing, just experiential.
Hmm.
Came down here, fell in love with it, saw some opportunity in the investing space, was at this fork in the road for myself from a professional standpoint. Met my now business partner who was starting the Green Coffee Company, which is our
Hmm.
business that we operate today, and went back to the US, went to the job in Houston. Just something kind of wasn't feeling right for me
Hmm.
from a gut check perspective. Was helping my business partner get the business off the ground. The first thing was to raise enough capital to start acquiring some farms and
Hmm.
doing some consolidation here in Colombia. We worked to start with primarily high net worth investors in the US. So even though we had operations in Colombia and we were farming down here, raising capital in the US required compliance with the same SEC rules as if we're coffee farming in
Hmm.
Hawaii, for example. So
Yep.
I was doing that in my free time, assisting nights and weekends, etc., and just said, you know what, this is where I want to go on the next step of
Yeah.
my journey. I can always come back to the attorney path if it doesn't go well. So I
Hmm.
made the leap, been down in Colombia full time since 2018, with the caveat that we opened our U.S. headquarters outside of Chicago, and I now
Hmm.
share my time leading our sales and logistics efforts in the U.S. outside Chicago. So I left the
Yeah.
U.S. and now kind of back and forth a little bit.
Very cool. Just a few points there. I had a full ride to law school, but I got to work with some corporate attorneys and understood the burnout. And so I started looking for other paths other than being an attorney, and was
Oh,
fortunate
there you go.
to find some as an entrepreneur. And so congratulations from breaking free. My dad was an attorney. You've got friends that are attorneys, and yeah, there's something about being an attorney that changes your perspective on the world a little bit. But there's also a couple kinds of law. There's put it together law, which I think is more exciting. It sounds like you're sort of still in that space. Like let's focus on building things, and then there's take it
Hmm.
apart law, which is litigation, and doesn't sound like any fun to me. So
Right.
yeah, and we also have a client that's in Medellin that, and I'm not pronouncing that as nicely as you, but they're sort of free to live wherever, and they've chosen there. So it sounds like I may need to take a trip down and just enjoy the space. So this is great. So let's get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts. So thinking about coffee, I think it's probably the most popular drink in the world, at least in the United States, and just looking at all the Starbucks that are out there. But it seems like supply chain's a little bit broken. Can you talk us through like what you're doing to work on resolving some of that?
It was interesting when we first got down here that you'd expect to see Starbucks and Nestle and the names that we all know in the space
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
going all the way down to the farm level.
Hmm.
But you don't. They get their coffee through importers, exporters, traders, international commodity markets
Hmm.
at scale. Right? There's always going to
Hmm.
be some how we work with this local farmer and we source some of our coffee, but the in large part it's all through these international middlemen. We saw an opportunity as we were here to say, well, why don't we become the farmers,
Hmm.
have a story to tell from farm to cup, be
Yeah.
able to guarantee the traceability for our clients in the US, literally down to the farm that we own, where the coffee came from, have the ability to tell a different story around sustainability and regenerative agriculture and some of the positive things we do in farming, which are really demand driven. I mean, you see more and more now, especially in the public market space, of investor requirements, shareholder activism, forcing public companies and other market participants to clean up their supply chain and have a
Hmm.
better story to tell.
Yeah.
When you're a coffee company that's buying from a lot of middlemen, all of that coffee, no matter where it comes from, it's all getting mixed. So there's literally no way to tell a clean story, and that's what leads to
Hmm.
some of the problems. China is in the coffee space, and Starbucks is facing litigation now about coffee coming from child labor farms,
Hmm.
coffee plantations in China, and some of it might be like they just don't literally just don't know where the coffee's
Right.
coming from. So to be able to give some assurance over the supply chain to our clients, we've seen be a big
Hmm.
value add, and you have to be able to do it at scale.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's talk about because I think the cool thing about Green Coffee Company is you're a growing company. Revenue seems to be growing nicely, and you've got some I'll say major customers. So can you just talk us through sort of where you're at revenue growth wise, and then some of the people you're partnering with?
Sure. So we started the business in 2017. We became the largest coffee producer in the country. I think 2021 was the year that we reached that milestone. We have about 10,000 acres, 10 million coffee trees. And since then, we've been pushing our product really through two different sales channels into the US. We service food service clients. I think, ballparks, hotels, casinos, cruise
Hmm.
lines. And then we also hold the US and Canadian rights to the Juan Valdez coffee brand. So if you're
Yeah.
40 and above or in the Hispanic population, it's going to be a brand
Yeah.
that people know, still has a huge market awareness in the US, even though the investment kind of died down a little bit in the early 2000s. So through that brand, we're also rejuvenating it and getting back into supermarket shelves and in retail locations.
Hmm. Got it. Yeah. No, that's great. Because I think that context matters. It's when you're partnered with major players, it shows that you're not just a small farm operation. And to hear that you've when I think of Colombian coffee, right, it's like the place to get coffee, and the fact that you're the largest producer, it says something. So can you tell us a little bit about uh, when I think about the things you're talking about, the growth you're having, the opportunity with coffee, there's going to be lots of things that change in my life before I start giving up my coffee, right?
Right.
Like whatever can happen in the economy, and I'm still going to be drinking my coffee to some extent. So tell us a little bit about uh, what is the opportunity that you guys are looking at, and then we'll get into some details there.
Well, as you mentioned, it's actually the second most traded commodity on Earth next to petroleum. 2 billion cups per day worldwide get consumed. The one stat I think is pretty interesting is in the last 2 days, 67% of all Americans have had a cup of coffee, which is more than the percentage of Americans that have had a glass of water, which I find to be kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Like who doesn't drink a glass of water over the course of
yeah.
2 days, but those are the statistics. So it's a
Hmm.
market that, and honestly, it's something that is part of people's daily ritual. They need it's just so fundamental to the day
Hmm.
that, it's not, we don't see it as, for example, it's risk due to recession or AI or these other factors that are impacting some businesses. What we see is some shifts among price ranges,
Hmm.
as inflation increases across the board. People might say, "Oh, let me try the private label option instead of the branded option," or things along those lines, or shift package size. Maybe they say, "Oh, I'll buy the 9 ounce instead of the 11 because
Hmm.
it's a little bit lower." It's a product that's going to be out there to stay for sure. I don't think that's even debatable.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. So, where's the opportunities that you're seeing in the marketplace to expand what you're doing at Green Coffee Company?
Oh, the one challenge about coffee is there is a lot of competition. It's not the,
Hmm.
the newest thing. People are not going to find a lot of people say, "Oh my God, I've never heard of coffee before." So we have to find ways to differentiate from the competition.
Hmm.
Really, we've done that in a strong way with our farm to cup story, being able to touch on some of those storytelling aspects that we started our conversation with. A good example would be we're now the official coffee for the US for the Western US national parks.
Hmm.
They have a story, of course, that they want to tell the visitors to the parks around the environment and
Yeah.
people they partner with, what's served at their resorts, what's served at their serving stations. Using the story that we've created, they have a creative way to talk
Hmm.
about their coffee program that they never
Yeah.
had before, that nobody else could offer them. They could serve Starbucks, but it doesn't add anything to their own storytelling.
Yeah.
That's where we're seeing a big connection. We also are the coffee for Carnival Cruise Lines,
Hmm.
another industry where, if you can imagine the amount of garbage and waste that's produced over the course of the 4-day cruise, or just the
Hmm.
environmental impact that they can have, these companies are under pressure to have narratives and stories and use suppliers that
Yep.
kind of shift the balance a little bit. So that's a big differentiator for us. And then with the Juan Valdez brand, we've gone from 0 stores in 2000 in March of 2025 to over 2,500 doors in just over a
Mm.
year. We just
Wow.
signed a deal with Walgreens for about 1,400 stores. We had rapid expansion in Target. We went from 55 stores to start to 317 in less than a year. Other major retailers. So it's a brand that, while it needs some education and investment with the
Yeah.
younger generations for the Hispanics and Gen Pop above 40, it's still to this day, when they see it on the shelf, it rings a bell for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just want to summarize a few things that you said there about, we'll call it sustainability. I think the traceability of what you're doing is really important to make sure that we're not using beans harvested with child labor from China.
Hmm.
You can point back to we've got we've got the data that shows that these beans were ethically sourced. And then you start to factor in like um, again from my experience with my friend that owns the coffee shop, hearing about the process. There's a lot of water that can be used in, we'll say washing the beans, and it
Hmm.
from what I understand, you've got a pretty efficient way to save water there, and then also you're preserving a lot of forest ground, and all of these factors I think start to come into play when people are going, you know what, we're responsible for stewarding this planet we live on, and let's make decisions with our dollars that sort of support that. So I don't know if there's anything else to talk about there, but I think those factors are all awfully important.
Those are the trend is towards consumers giving more thought to the products that they purchase in terms of
Hmm.
where it comes from, what its story is. 70% of consumers, I think, when polled, will say those things are important to me. Everything has a price.
Hmm.
People are still, I would say, reserved in terms of what premium they'll pay for those items. But when
Hmm.
you have to differentiate between one or the other, it's certainly helpful to win that head-to-head battle.
Yeah, yeah, great. So one of the things that I we like to talk about is we really like a good story, and we like to invest in things that are, I'll say, good for us, right? Like good for society, good for the earth. We also like those investments to make a lot of sense financially. So
Hmm.
can we flip over and look at just a little bit about what is the goal here? I will give people an opportunity to connect with you and learn more about what Green Coffee Company is doing to sort of expand their operations. But like, is the goal to have a private investment and kick off some cash flow? Is it to exit at some point? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what the end target is there?
Our target is a public listing in the US,
Hmm.
NYSE, Nasdaq in the next 18 months is where we're directionally focused and trying to get to for our investors. We've raised about $100 million from a little bit over 500 high net worth investors, $100,000 checks and up,
Hmm.
primarily. And that's basically the mandate that they've given us. They want to see some liquidity in that
Hmm.
period of time. That's what we're focused on. We're working with some investment banks, corporate attorneys, and looking at the ways to get there, whether through a regular listing or a direct listing, but
Hmm.
exploring that as the strategy. We don't want to sell the business, to be quite
Sure.
honest. There's always a price that you change your mind when with respect
Yeah.
to that. But the
Sure.
the idea behind the IPO would be we get investors the liquidity that they would like. Then becomes their option whether they want to sell everything, keep some, take some money off the table, buy more,
Hmm.
everything that comes with that liquidity, flexibility, but then also gives us more access to capital that we can use to expand our
Hmm.
footprint, which is the
Yeah.
idea. So that's the direction that we're aiming for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, uh, this is great. I think this is really interesting how you've combined a lot of these pieces together, right? We think the story makes a lot of sense. Like let's do coffee in a way that is sustainable, that's good for the environment, good for the people that are growing it and harvesting it, and which ultimately means it's good for me as a consumer because
Hmm.
it's not trashing this planet. And then also thinking about it from purely an investment point of view, it's always nice to if you can get involved with companies before they go IPO like that, and then they have a healthy offering. It works out nicely. Conversations like the one we're having today with Adam didn't happen by accident. They happen because listeners like you are asking the right questions. And I want to hear yours. Head over to vitalwealth.com/questions and drop us your biggest questions around alternative investing, tax strategy, wealth building, whatever it is keeping you up at night. We read every single one and we use them to shape exactly who we bring on to the next show. The more you tell us what you need, the better the show gets. So don't sit on it. Go to vitalwealth.com/questions right now, and let's make sure the next expert we bring on is answering exactly what you need to hear. All right, back to Adam. Adam, this is all really fascinating. One of the things that when we start thinking about making investments into private companies is it's always good to understand. Let's take it from the origin of the company. We got a little bit of that from you, but I'm interested in the team you've built, and really it's operations. When we execute really well on the operation side, those are companies we like to invest in. So if it's okay, I know I just covered a lot of ground. Can we start off with the kind of the origin of what you've been doing in Colombia, and then we'll work our way to the team you've built.
Sure. The origin was we had a group of investors. As I mentioned, we work with high net worth investors who are already focused and interested in Colombia. They'd
Hmm.
been investing for several years in commercial real estate, mixed use properties here. And my business partner and I had the connection with them. And they said, we really were interested in something that looks, feels, tastes like real estate, but isn't pure real estate. So we thought about agriculture, which is,
Yeah.
it's a huge economy for agriculture here in Colombia. And then with respect to just what can people feel comfortable and wrap their heads around, we grew up in the US largely through the marketing around the Juan Valdez brand, but Colombian
Hmm.
coffee generally just, the two are synonymous. So coffee in Colombia is the national product here, is the third largest producer of coffee in the world. The US audience that we would need to rely on to access capital to get the business going could conceptualize the business plan. So we said,
Hmm.
what we can do differently is start rolling up some farms, consolidate some infrastructure. What you see in Colombia is it's a very fragmented market. About 95% of all the farming families here, and there's 500,000 of them, own a few acres or less. You don't have big conglomerates down here.
Hmm.
It's not a And if you're going to do an acquisition of farms, you're buying directly from a family,
Hmm.
basically. So
Yep.
what we ran into was the typical story would be great grandpa, grandpa, a few cousins, uncles, etc., who all live in the same community, buy some land. And when I say land, I really mean like the sides of mountains,
Yeah.
90-degree incline, steep pieces of mountainous terrain in Colombia, and they consolidate those and run it as a family farm. Eventually, that passes down through the generations, and you run into second, third, fourth generation person in the family who no longer wants to be in coffee. They want to live in Miami. They want to go to New York, whatever it might be. But a lot of the family wealth will be tied up in that coffee asset in the farmland. And it's not a market where you can go and say, "Oh, let me go to the bank and refinance and tap into the equity that I've built here." You
Hmm.
basically have to sell it, or there's no way to access the equity. So we
Yeah.
found farming regions of Colombia that had some of those larger plots that weren't as fragmented as some of the other areas. There is a little bit
Hmm.
of segmentation. Some of these are kind of monocrop towns where, one or two families own the entire town.
Yep.
We were able to do some deals to get the initial acquisitions challenging. Things are in a different language, different culture, and you're not
Yep.
negotiating with the CFO and general counsel of,
Hmm.
Starbucks. You're talking to 17 family members, all of them who may have a different interest or want a different price, or some of
Hmm.
them hate each other, right? They
Right.
don't want
Yep.
to agree. Somebody likes it, the other person doesn't like it. So a
Hmm.
challenging
Yeah.
acquisition strategy, but also a nice barrier to entry. I don't
Hmm.
think folks from La Colombe or wherever are going to come down here anytime soon and say, let's start buying coffee farms in Colombia and go through this process. So we've
Yeah.
endured pain that I expect a lot of people will not be willing to do.
Yeah. And one thing I think is really important to highlight is you think about companies that are going public, and generally we're looking at a lot of the tech companies, right? We're thinking, Netflix, Amazon, uh, Facebook or Meta, Google, and there isn't a lot of hard assets tied to those companies. There
Hmm.
might be some, but it's not the majority of their balance sheet. And so obviously your revenues from the coffee you're generating are awfully important. But I love that there's such a strong hard asset base there. When we think about valuing companies, it's nice to go, yep, there's a lot of assets here in this organization that we can put a real dollar figure to versus a user count that we're trying to monetize at some point in the future. So I think
Yes.
that's just awfully important when we're thinking about the investments that we're making. I'm a huge proponent of real estate, love real estate, but it's also not for everybody, and I think that's an important factor when we're looking at this. It's like hard assets have a lot of value. So let's talk a little bit about the team. I'm interested. When generally we see um, people that are, whether it's, mom and pop that have raised business up to a certain level. Then they bring in private equity. We see private equity enter the equation with a lot of our clients at times. And so then what private equity generally does is like, okay, we're familiar with companies at a $30 million revenue run rate, and we know how to take them to 100. And so they bring in people that have that experience, right? The mom and pop that and this is a fantastic thing that took it from 0 to 30, have no experience going from 30 to 100. Not that they can't figure
Hmm.
it out, but when you've been there, done that before, uh, it's a little easier, right? It's like I can navigate a new city much slower than I can, a local that's been there for 40 years. So when we think about building that team, can you just talk us through a little bit of your operations and how you plan on going from this thing you've built and scaled really nicely to IPO?
Sure. Well, obviously, I'm not Colombian. My business
Hmm.
partner who started the business together, not Colombian either. He's ex PwC
Hmm.
M&A accountant who lived internationally, Bermuda, Hong Kong, China, Colombia, but but did not, not a Colombian by birth. And you have to
Hmm.
find people. The first level was, in terms of team building, was making sure we have people who understand the culture and understand agriculture and know how to farm in Colombia. So we found the veterans that we need in that space, people with 20 plus years in coffee in Colombia, and also who had strong backgrounds in industrial engineering, because a big part of our model is dependent on upgrades in technology versus what's traditionally been used in coffee. We also, working back from the IPO goal, wanted to make sure we have people on the team that could run and be part of a public company organization.
Yep.
So our now president and CFO in Colombia, she was the CFO for Grupo Éxito, which is the largest retail in Colombia, one of the few public companies that was traded on the NYSE. So she now works on our team. And then in the US, in terms of sales, we got the head of sales from Intelligentsia Coffee, about $100 million business
Yeah.
there in the US. Our new head of marketing came over after working on the build out for the success of Modelo, Pacifico, and Corona. So knows how to talk to the Hispanic consumers, which are really important to us with Colombian coffee and the Juan Valdez brand. So a lot of it's kind of like inverting from where we want to go and knowing the talent that we need to have. And then you have to make the upfront bets, right? Like
Hmm.
we've raised the money, made the bets, and now we're starting to see the sales and revenue and clients come in. That's been the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. And, I am, I'm always impressed with the business owner that sees an opportunity in the marketplace and goes and takes advantages of it versus being a baker that wants to open a bakery, right?
Hmm.
I'm a good technician, and so I just want to sort of expand that thinking a little bit and like serve people with my product. Nothing wrong with that, but we think there's a something special about somebody that is really good at running businesses, taking business to a certain level, and it sounds like you've built out the team to do all the things that you're hoping to accomplish. So that's exciting. I'm happy to hear that it's not this team's first time dealing with large operations. So this is
No,
good.
no.
Good. So and I think another thing that's awfully important too, just thinking about when we're looking at investments, there's healthy cash flow, right? You've got a physical product that is being sold, and we're not a software with a user base that we're trying to figure out how we're going to monetize. And so I think that's always important. It just makes the business real and tangible. Like, okay, we got hard assets, we got cash flow. There's financial statements here that can support all that, and it is good. Adam, what else should we be talking about when it comes to the opportunity with coffee?
Well, I think it's important, again, working back from this IPO goal that we have, one thing that's been important to our US investors is that we were structured as a US company.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
we set up the business through a US Delaware-based holding company. Everything is governed by US law. The banking's done in the US. Everything is 100% owner of our Colombian subsidiaries. So everything
Right.
flows up. But really it would be an investment in a US company, just like you're
Hmm.
you're investing in Apple, but it gives you that foreign market exposure,
Hmm.
right? What's
Yeah.
going on in different areas of the world. So that was important to us as well, and gives our investors another level of comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is an important piece. So, um, yeah, Adam, this has been great. So here's what I think. I'm just going to summarize. You've grown and scaled this business nicely. You've done it with a brand that I'll say most of us are familiar with. I remember the Juan Valdez commercials as a kid growing up, and you're the largest operator in Colombia when it comes to coffee, and I that's just really impressive. And then I start looking at some of the brands that you're working with, from Target to national forest. We've got Carnival Cruise. We got I think the Cubs. I'm a Cubs fan, so go
Yes.
Cubs.
There you go.
That's always exciting, and it just gives credibility to the work you're doing. And then moving on to it being sustainable all the way through, along with the team that you've built. It's like, okay, there's some foundation here for some a really healthy business. And so if people are interested in learning more about that, if they're like, hey, I'm excited about this, I'm looking at diversifying my portfolio, and I'm would like to consider an investment in coffee, what is the best place for people to connect with you?
Sure. So we're raising some capital right now, primarily to fund inventory for a lot of these new clients that you just mentioned. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking for high net worth accredited investors and have to meet the SEC definition for accreds, $100,000 checks and up. The best way to get in touch is to find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. Through there, just send me a message. I can get you to our investor relations team, who will share
Mm-hmm.
all of the offering materials and answer any questions and anything there. But Adam Jason on LinkedIn, and that'll be the
Yeah.
best way. And then it's good to have the personal connection as well.
Yeah, great. We'll make sure there's a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes if people want to reach out and learn more. It is a unique opportunity in a very traditional business, which is cool. So,
Thank you.
yeah. I think about, again, to recap some of the things we started the show with, alternative investments do some unique things to our investment portfolio. It sort of dampens volatility because I can tell you that the coffee market is not going to operate like the oil and gas market, like the Austin, Texas real estate market. And so when we think about those things, it brings just a different dimension to our investments. And so people should be checking with their investment advisors before they make any investment decisions. That's sort of my disclaimer. But we think these things are worth considering. And so if you do nothing, you're remaining stuck in traditional, we'll say, fully priced markets where you could be missing out on some asymmetric upside opportunities. You always hear the cool stories about investing pre-IPO and how that can shake out. It doesn't always turn into a multiple of the dollars you put in, but that's obviously the objective. So you can build wealth that's if you're not taking action, you're less diversified, you're more volatile. You're less durable during the long term. And then, making some of these, pursuing some of these opportunities that are off market, you're not just thinking like an allocator, like I'm going to asset and allocate a certain way. I'm like being very strategic in things that align with my values and I think are great. And, as a coffee lover, I had a nice pour over this morning. Always like to invest in things that I'm personally enjoying. So, this is just a unique opportunity. And so I think my encouragement is look into it, connect with Green Coffee Company and Adam and just see what they've got going on. And if it makes sense for you, great. If it doesn't, that's also great. But this is fun. Adam, anything else we should talk about before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It was a good conversation. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. To everyone tuning in, thank you. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor and share it with one person in your life who's been looking for ways to diversify and get out of the traditional market hamster wheel. One share could change someone's entire financial trajectory. And that's what this community is all about. And before you go, swing by vitalwealth.com/resources. We've packed it with tools, guides, and strategies to help you minimize taxes and build serious wealth. Everything we talk about on this show, we back up with real resources over at vitalwealth.com/resources. Go check it out and take something with you. If this episode delivered value, please take 30 seconds and leave us a review. It helps us reach more entrepreneurs like you and keeps incredible guests like Adam coming through that door every single week. And remember, you're a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you're the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities, driving growth, and making an impact. You're vital to your family, creating abundance in every aspect of life. You're vital to me because you're committed to growing your wealth, leading with purpose, and creating something truly great. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community of Vital Entrepreneurs. I appreciate you, and I look forward to having you back here next time on the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast, where we help entrepreneurs minimize their taxes, master wealth, and optimize their lives.